Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Ellie Parker and I'm an LCI Leadership Group member and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'd like to welcome you to the 9th webinar presented on behalf of the Lean Construction Ireland, the Construction Client Forum and the Construction Academia Forum. Firstly, some logistics. If you have a question, please type it in on the webinar through the software. I will consolidate these and ask Dennis in the second half of the webinar. If there are any questions that we don't get answered during the session, we will follow up with those by email afterwards. The agenda today will be as follows: a brief introduction from myself and then a 30-minute presentation from Dennis and then our 20 minutes of Q&A. So before we get started, I'd like to thank PM Group, who are the kind sponsors of all of our LCI webinars in 2017. Today's webinar title is Lessons from the US National Housing Quality Award, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing about this. Our speaker for today is a returning speaker. It's Dennis Leonard of Graham Construction. Dennis has a degree in construction and engineering, an MBA and a PhD in business and management, quality management, and is also a fellow of the Chartered Quality Institute and the American Society for Quality. He has experience in Lean, Six Sigma, ISO 9001, ISO 14001, OHSAS 18001, EFQM, and the US Baldrige criteria. He has worked with quality management in the construction industry for 15 years in commercial, civil engineering and home building, as well as with the insurance and building science organizations. And now I'm going to pass you over to Dennis for his presentation on lessons from the US National Housing Quality Award, and maybe he'll explain some of all those abbreviations I read out during his bio. Over to you, Dennis.
Thanks very much, Ellie. Thank you. Welcome to the webinar, everyone. What I wanted to do today was begin by setting a little bit of context about how and why the National Housing Quality Award, or NHQA, was formed, move into how it functions, its impact, how it can be used anywhere across the world, and finally getting into the insights of two particular builder case studies. I wanted to start with this report that came out last year, 2016. This was from the National House Building Council and the Home Builders Federation in the UK. And this report showed that 93% of buyers reported problems with their homes to their builders. Of those, 35% were reporting 11 or more problems. And they had also shown in this report year over year a decline in customer satisfaction, down from 90 to 86%. Now, I'm simply starting with this to set a little bit of context. In other words, we have in the industry opportunities to improve, but similar sort of data, similar sort of numbers exist in the US and existed when the National Housing Quality Award was created. And the idea was to set a criteria that covered a wide range of issues to cover quality management across the industry in home building, to recognize some of the best companies in the industry and then use those as role models, and to also use it as a way of benchmarking, getting key groups within the industry together and essentially to raise the bar in the industry. Now here in Europe, we've got the EFQM excellence model, or excellence criteria. In the US, it's the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award criteria. And this had been around for a number of years when the National Housing Quality Award was being formed. And so it was looked at as the inspiration to create a business excellence criteria for the home building industry. Now, Baldrige, just to give a little bit of a background on that, that's been used in across every industry in the US. It's over 25 years now, coming up in 30 years. And this is just an example of the sort of impacts that it's had. This is one piece of research between 1992 and 2002. The Baldrige Index outperformed the S&P 500 by 6.5 to 1. This is where they were taking like-for-like companies that had won the Baldrige award and comparing them to non-Baldrige winners. And there are other studies to show this. Jacob, Madu, and Tang had looked at winners performing significantly better than their comparison groups in terms of profitability and asset utilization. So for literally coming up on 30 years, the Baldrige Award was very successful in helping companies drive improvement. That's from leadership right through to business results. So the National Housing Quality Award looked at the Baldrige model as the inspiration and adapted it to the industry. And they used the same sort of criteria. This is the House of Quality model that they use for the NHQA. Leadership at the apex, strategic planning then coordinating all of the other groups below, process management, customer satisfaction, human resources, construction quality, trade partnership, and at the bottom, business results. Now, within this model, just like with Baldrige, just like with the EFQM, this is not a prescriptive model, and it's a systems theory concept. And so you are able to connect a wide range of issues within this criteria. So it becomes an umbrella under which you can coordinate and manage a wide range of initiatives that you may be driving in your company. From the top, communication, the mission, the values of the organization. In terms of strategic planning, for example, scenario planning. In terms of tools, techniques, and approaches within process management, that would be ISO 9001, Lean, Six Sigma, all the process improvements, tools, and techniques that go into that. In customer satisfaction, that would be CRM or customer relations management. And in business results, that would include things like your balance scorecard. The point being here that it's not prescriptive for what you use, but it allows you to coordinate all of the efforts going on within the organization from the strategic level all the way down to ensure you're getting the best value out of the initiatives that you're running in the company. So for many, this became a blueprint that you could use to help coordinate and set up and structure the initiatives and the strategy in your company. The NHQA Steps to Excellence, there's honorable mention, bronze, silver, and gold. And at honorable mention level, we're essentially special cases where there's one outstanding practice, but then as you move up the steps of excellence, and again, this is similar to the EFQM approach, you're talking about organizations that have systematic approaches, there's no major gaps in the criteria. At silver, those organizations are industry leaders in most of the categories, and they have refined business practices with good results. And then the performance excellence gold level, those are national benchmark across all of the categories, and quality is an integrated and sustained approach throughout the organization. And many companies use this stepping approach. Many companies have started, they've gotten the feedback report, they haven't achieved any of these levels, but they've come back, they've addressed the feedback report, they've come back and worked their way through bronze, silver, and gold. Anyone can apply within the National Housing Quality Award. So these are numbers on past winners. So we've literally had a company with 15 employees going up to a company with 800, a company building 15 homes per year up to one building over 20,000, and home price ranges ranging from 150,000 up to 1.7 million. So whether it's custom, production, build on your lot, it doesn't matter. Everyone can use the criteria and everyone can find value with the criteria. In terms of value, the feedback report, that report on the evaluation by the judges based on the submission or based on a site visit is estimated at a value of $8,000. That's just receiving the report, that's without a site visit. With a site visit, the time and energy by the team of judges, who all pay their way, by the way, represents a value of about $22,000. So there's a really good ROI in participating in this process. Now, if you think back to the criteria model that I showed, a very simple way to view what you do with the criteria is you literally walk through leadership strategy, and so on. There's a series of questions in the criteria. And at the end of the webinar, we'll be sending out 3 documents, and that includes a copy of the criteria. So you can literally go through and take a look at those questions and evaluate your own organization. So for each category, you go through and you simply ask yourself each of those questions. You can score and evaluate yourself on each of those questions, but you can also say, for each of those questions, are these strengths, are they OFEs, are opportunities for improvement? And so as you go through the questions, as you go through the criteria, you're listing what your strengths are and what your opportunities for improvement are. The whole idea of that is then to prioritize the list of strengths, prioritize the list of opportunities for improvement, to come up with a consensus agreement or score within each category, and then to actually implement a plan to address top 1, 2, or 3 of those opportunities for improvement and make that, for example, part of the strategic plan for the next year. And the strengths are actually also an interesting one to prioritize, because we find over the years that many companies are surprised at what some of their strengths are. They've simply perceived them as, that's what we do, it's a normal part of our business, not recognizing that it's actually a core strength of the business and something that shouldn't be put to the side, for example. In terms of the National Housing Quality Award impacts itself, this is going back to 1997, but an average net income before taxes of those builders was 5.1% with a gross margin of 18.5%. That was the comparison group of builders. And then you can see the NHQA builders, their average net income was 11.2 and 25.5 for gross margin. So you can, again, just like with EFQM, just like with Baldrige, research shows that the builders using this criteria to drive their business have higher margins. Here's another sample across the board of 4 different builders and the sort of impacts they have. Grayson Homes, we're showing 98% homes, 0 defect at closing. They had a net profit increase of 9%. Pringle Homes in Florida had a reduced cycle time by 15%. Estes Home in Washington State, this was a small custom builder. 95% of their trades listed them as the best builder to work for. And T.S. Lewis in Arizona, 33% of home buyers referred them or recommended them to a friend or family member as a home builder, and that was passive. That was literally the home buyer doing that themselves. So it's a little bit of an insight to the range of impacts that NHQA have had on builders over the years. This is looking at winners from 1993 to 2009. And these are ranges, but it does give you an insight to that group of builders. And over the years, there's been 117 NHQA awards, and 36 of those were gold awards to builders. So this is a bit of an insight to that population, to that group of builders, in terms of their gross profit margins of 12 to 20%, construction costs versus budget of plus or minus 1%, referral rates of 29%, cycle time reductions of 15 to 50%, and so on. There are 2 interesting stats in there too, and not just about customers, but the employee satisfaction of 94% and trade satisfaction of 95%. And that gives, again, a little bit of a perspective of the broad range of issues that the criteria looks at and helps the business and the builders to look at and consider. This is a piece of research published last year, 2016. We looked at 21 builders. These builders combined were building over 42,000 homes, and this represented about 9.6% of new home closings in that year, according to the NHB in the US. So this was a pretty good sample size to get an insight. And what you've got here, the presentation will be available online after this session. You can take a little look at this in more detail there, but also at the end of the session, one of the documents that we'll be sending out is actually this report, so you can read it in detail. But what you're looking at here is simply a range to minimum to maximum on these 5 issues for these builders, from cycle time down to the number of days built into schedule for slippage, inspection or rework, and the amount spent on the home on cost over budget, over construction budget. And what you've got here are the minimums, the maximums, and the averages. The interesting thing is that NHQA winners were all in the minimum category. So they were the benchmarks here. But it does give you a little bit of metric benchmark insight to some of these builders, what their cycle times were, and the sort of cost over budget that they were dealing with. And again, this is on a per home basis. So for example, if you look at the amount spent per home on cost over budget, the average was $1,800. So start looking at that on a home-by-home basis, and suddenly you really see the opportunities to drive down cost of quality in home building. This is another example on a different range of metrics, looking at quality practitioners on the left, and on the right, non-quality practitioners. And actually, this was those that used the quality, the NHQA quality criteria, and those that did not. So whether it was number of supervisors, the cycle time target to build a home in working days, or warranty items reported per home following closing, the quality practitioners, the NHQA winners and those using the criteria had better numbers than those that were not using it. This is just another insight to some of the drivers behind the NHQA. This was a piece of research done back in 2006 with J.D. Powers. They're no longer doing this, these customer satisfaction surveys, but what they were showing was the number of recommendations per home buyer and how that impacted the satisfaction scores. In the middle of the chart, you'll see two numbers, 3.96 and 4.62, and they were saying if you just took that small difference of 0.66 and extra recommendations from a home buyer, what impact could that potentially make on your business? And so if you take that 0.66 recommendation per buyer, and then I took the average number of return questionnaires per builder that was involved in this survey with J.D. Powers, that equals an additional potential 84 customers. J.D. Powers were saying there was a 15% conversion rate to sales, which was an additional 12 home sales per year. And again, this is going on J.D. Powers numbers, and that was an average sale price of $292,000. So there was a revenue of $3.5 million. Looking at the 5% average profit margin, just by increasing the number of recommendations and customer satisfaction by 0.66 on their scale, that turned into $175,000 in additional profit on the bottom line from those additional recommendations. In other words, the focus on the customer, the focus on getting recommendations has a dramatic impact on the bottom line. This is another insight on the research. This was looking at the fall in the overall customer satisfaction index based on the number of repeat visits back to a homeowner after they've purchased their home for warranty issues. So if you call a home buyer back, if a home buyer calls in and you go back to see them, you resolve that issue at the first time, that's fine. There'll be a drop in customer satisfaction because they've had an error, but they recognize that you dealt with it. But if you come back a second and a third time, your satisfaction scores start to fall dramatically. And it was this sort of data and these sort of numbers that the NHQA winners and participants were looking at that really helped them buy into the focus on customer satisfaction and driving those sorts of performance measures. So I'm going to dive now into looking at two case study home builders. One is Watson Castanis Hybrid Homes based in California. This was at the time a small group, 28 people. They were building 200 homes per year. They were single-family detached homes, and they were in the range of $90,000 through $300,000 per home. This was a quote that was used about them, that they were in a ravaged, foreclosure-impacted marketplace at the time. It was a tough market. Their view about moving forward into the future was that they wanted to focus on quality methodologies, whatever those happened to be. and it was about improving the performance of the home, increasing the efficiency of that small team, and having a strong strategic plan for moving forward. So their strategy was, looking at the National Housing Quality Award, was, well, what impact can this have for me? Who's the champion? And that was Mike Nymon, the president at the time, was the champion to drive this. And then using that criteria, using benchmarking, using everyone, not just within the team, but including the subcontractors, to help drive the company forward using the criteria. And they used the NHQA also to do ongoing measurement and monitoring. So they did a self-assessment. They used the NHQA criteria, not just to look at the strengths and opportunities for improvement, but to score themselves. And then year on year, they would actually redo that self-assessment to be able to see, are we improving year on year? Another focus was they wanted to use minimal resources and effort. It was a small team of people. They had to get on with the daily business, and they wanted 1 year between literally starting and having an ROI on the project. And so they established the champion. They created a focus on the management team. They would participate in the training first and then rolled it down throughout the staff. They conducted the self-assessment. They hit NHQA and formed what they called WIGs, or work improvement groups, or teams. They also decided to do an application to NHQA, so they would actually get third-party, independent, fresh insight and feedback on their organization. And this was all about hands-on training. The company leaders participated in the training first, so they would understand it, and then participated and acted as facilitators when the rest of the company training was rolled out. And they used, during that training, they used an actual work improvement group to actually use as the case study as they went through. So this wasn't talking about how to improve widgets. It was, okay, how do we actually use these tools to help us kick off one of the work improvement groups? And they also trained the subcontractors. And those were for the groups: their home delivery process, scopes of work, options processing, and customer service feedback. Their benchmarking included going to visit a number of past NHQA winners. As I said, that was one of the aims of NHQA, creating role models and the benchmarking opportunity, not just metrics, but going along and meeting those builders. And then reaching out to groups like the American Society for Quality in the States to get out of industry examples and benchmarking visits and opportunities. So what they created was an integrated strategic view of quality. When they had that application together, they used the self-assessment to drive the OFEs, and they used industry and quality experts through the feedback report to take their strategic planning to the next level. They used that feedback as an inherent part of their strategic planning process. For them, their impact was an improvement in performance. They improved in every category within the self-assessment criteria. They increased the number of homes from 200 to 300. They reduced defects dramatically by 50%. They doubled the energy efficiency performance of their homes. And in that first year, that first application, they won an NHQA bronze. They came back the next year and won silver. And in 2010, that first year, they also won a National Customer Satisfaction Award. So for them, it was well within the 1 year period that they had a number of pieces of feedback, not just the awards, but their, for example, a reduction in defects, that showed that using the criteria, using that as a way to coordinate their efforts, had a significant ROI and payoff. The other example I want to talk about is Veridian Homes. Veridian Homes have been working with the NHQA for about 15 years. In that time, they've earned 5 NHQA awards. That was 3 gold and 2 silver, and they keep coming back year on year because they see the value in the process and the value of the criteria. This company was formed in 2003, but actually it was a merger of 2 companies that were formed back over 50 years ago, but they're both family-owned businesses and currently building about 350 homes per year. When they won their second goal, they were building about 500 homes per year. And this is a range of the awards that they've won over the years. And this is just to give a little bit of an insight that the NHQA was really a core driver and coordinator of all of this. These were examples for them, for Veridian, these were seen as examples that they were doing the right thing, that they were getting objective, impartial evaluation on a wide range of aspects of the business, and we're winning these awards. So they're doing something right. And those range of issues that were being evaluated were quality, customer satisfaction, energy efficiency, safety, and then into details like waste recycling, innovation, leadership, and community service. This was the model that Veridian used. They had a strategic, tactical, operational pyramid approach. At the top was the National Housing Quality Award. Below that was builder certification. This in the US was essentially a home building industry version of ISO 9001. And then at the bottom, at the operational level, were the quality tools. And there was a wide range of tools and techniques that they were using, from Six Sigma into Lean, such as value stream mapping, 5S, having action plans, and so on. This is a little insight to how they tried to strategically plan and roll that down, not just within departments, but to individuals. So individuals had what they called personal performance and development plans, and this was what their plans were over the next year, the resources, what they wanted to develop in, but all of those connected all the way back into the strategic objectives and the departmental tactical objectives of the organization. So at the strategic level, there were drivers, objectives, dates assigned, and managers assigned to achieve those, and then all of the staff within that group, within their PPDs, could connect into those and see the training I'm getting, the work that I'm doing, the goals that I'm setting myself are helping me achieve what the organization is trying to achieve. This is another insight to the strategic planning process. There were quarterly management meetings. Those rolled down into weekly, monthly and weekly department meetings, bi-weekly team meetings. Those were all company team meetings, weekly one-on-ones with one's individual manager. That PPD process I talked about in gain share, which was a profit-sharing approach that the organization had. They also used the Six Sigma approach of define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, and they used this essentially as a project management tool or a key way to drive individual improvement projects. They also used their version of an integrated quality, environmental, health, and safety management system. This is an example of a job site production audit checklist. And if you look on there, there are issues on there that relate to construction, quality, environmental, and safety. This is a way of looking at the range of issues that they had going on in the organization to help coordinate with and connect with the trade partners of the subs. That was going from having monthly reviews of scopes of work to having every 2 weeks meetings with key groups of the subcontractors. There was a trade partner or subcontractor advisory council. There were Kaizen reviews for improvement. There were on-request meetings. There was an annual trade partner quality conference where not just speakers from the industry that came in, but speakers outside the industry and actual subcontractors themselves would do presentations where they had best practices. So this chart tries to articulate the wide range of issues that were going on to help these subcontractors improve their own businesses and connect seamlessly into how Veridian Homes were actually functioning as a business. For them, as with many construction companies, Veridian Homes was essentially the construction management. That's what they did professionally. It was the subcontractors that actually did the work. So there had to be a very strong relationship and very strong systems and processes in place to allow them to achieve the customer satisfaction goals that were set. They referred to their production system as EvenFlow, an EvenFlow cycle times. It was a timber frame on concrete basement, and the numbers are in working days. So from a home buyer signing a contract to the date of closing that home and signing off on that home was 83 days. from frame start on top of the foundation or the basement was 45 days to the certificate of occupancy. And then within those, you can see the breakdown. Contract signing to dig was 25 days, excavation foundation 3, and so on. That sort of cycle time that they were staying to on a regular, consistent basis was done while providing 50 different models, each with multiple elevation and floor choices. In addition, there were personal choices from doorknobs to light switches. And they were building on that EvenFlow cycle 2.5 homes per day. And at this point, this is back when they won gold for the second time, 550 homes per year. And they guaranteed the closing date at the contract signing. They had 100% on-time closing in 4 years, and all of these homes were energy efficient, green built, and that included recycling of over 6,000 tons the last time that I'd seen data on this. Again, green, energy efficient homes. 90% of the homes at home orientation were zero defect. The 10% of issues that were raised were minor and superficial, most related to a scratch or painting issues. The HERS index, which is the home energy rating scheme in the US, an index of 57 in production homes, 89 in custom. Those are high performance numbers. And this company, at this snapshot in time, have been using about 20 improvement teams over the years to reduce warranty costs. And that was 30 to 75%. They reduced defects by 50%. And this is within the construction team, and they reduced, while reducing those defects by 50%, they were also reducing the numbers of inspection teams and inspections. They had over 95% customer satisfaction, and a number that they've been able to hold consistently for many years now is 76% of their home buyers hadn't actually considered another builder. Veridian was considered to be the best builder, and a lot of that was based on the customer satisfaction numbers that were done independently by a third party. So we've covered a lot of material in this presentation. The NHQA criteria, the home builder benchmarking paper, there's also an additional study of 10 NHQA winners. Those 3 documents will be made available after the webinar, and so you can take your time and go through those in detail. But in the meantime, if you'd like to contact me for more information, I'd be delighted to talk to you. And finally, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Dennis, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for that. I'll start you off with a simple question. What is the best way to get started with the NHQA criteria?
I think the best way to get started is simply to read the criteria itself, read it sort of one-on-one, take a read through there, take a highlighter and start highlighting issues that you think that you have a problem with, or gaps that exist within your organization. Tick off the great things that you do, but highlight those gaps, those areas that you think you need to address. And then you can simply prioritize those. The next step is to get together with a group within your business and see how you align on those issues. And part of the value of that is actually to see where you agree and disagree. It's that discussion, or as they refer to it as that consensus building, is what's really powerful, because what you suddenly realize is that people have a different understanding. There are issues within the company that different people know and don't know about, so it's a learning opportunity. But it's coming to an agreement on what the top issues are, the top opportunities for improvement are for you in the organization. Just diving in and doing that. I think a lot of people look at the word award, and the question they actually ask is, are we going to apply for the award this year? That shouldn't be the question. The question should be, let's get started. Let's just read through this and see if these are the best practices that some of the best builders are doing, are we doing them? And where the gaps are, where we're not doing it, let's talk about those and think about those. Let's prioritize. And then by doing a web search, there are a lot of articles out there that have been written on NHQA winners. And so you have a chance to go in and take a look at, well, what were some of those best practices? How did they do them? To sort of help your learning curve. How can we jump on board some of those and try some of those out, maybe in a pilot, maybe on one home, maybe on one crew, see what that impact is, and then see if we want to implement that across the organization. But I think the key lesson is to actually get started. So many people just think about this as an award rather than an improvement process or an improvement opportunity.
It's fascinating, yeah. And in the same way, do people believe that the criteria is better suited to larger businesses? I assume it probably could be used for both.
Yes, it can be used for both. And yes, most people assume, just like with EFQM, just like with the Baldrige criteria in the US, the assumption is this has been designed and built for large organizations that have large resources. Veridian Homes had about 100 employees. Walking Castanas had about 28 employees. I think the lowest we've had was a company with 15 employees. So it can be done with a small organization. And actually, all of those organizations, those 3 organizations I'm talking about, were all small family-owned businesses. Now, we've had the national builders participate, and yes, they have the resources, but the other way to look at it is they have a lot more work to do. They have larger production systems, many more employees, and so they have a lot more systems to put in place. But if you also then look at EFQ and Baldrige themselves that the NHQA is based on, small businesses have been using those for years. There's actually a small business category within the Baldrige criteria. So it certainly can be used by small businesses, and the nice thing is it's essentially scalable. If you're not applying, you're just looking at which piece of the puzzle do we want to look at, where do we think we need to improve, and how can we start improving, and where are the lessons out there that we can pick up on how quickly we can implement some of these best practices. The other thing I'd mention in here is in terms of lean, back at the Veridian pyramid, it showed some tools at the very bottom, the sort of operational tools that could be used. Some of those are very obvious lean tools like 5S, but there's a wide range of tools that can be used from ISO, Kaizen, and so on. And all of those tools can, let's call it at the operational level, in process improvement teams, any of those tools that are appropriate can be used. The whole idea of the criteria is to kind of coordinate those. So if you've got, for example, talked about Veridian having 20 improvement teams, making sure that each of those teams are not duplicating work, that they're all working in the same direction, they're all aligned with the strategic and the tactical plans within the departments of the organization. And this criteria is very good at doing that. The application itself actually is a useful document, because I know a number of organizations have used it with banks, for example, when they're going for loans, or if they're in other business discussions. It's a great overview of an organization. And I know some other builders that delete certain sensitive information out of the document and then use it essentially as a new employee brochure. It's a wonderful insight to the organization, from its vision, mission, and values right through to key business results. So it's a wonderful insight to a business.
Thanks for that, Dennis. I was going to ask you about the lean tools there, and I had a headset issue, sorry. Another question we have in, and I think this is one that's nearly been asked on every webinar so far. What is the biggest barrier to getting management to buy into these improvements, and how do you get around that?
I think there's probably 2 pieces to that puzzle. One is showing an impact. What can this do for us? I think that's the most important, and at least 2 of those studies that I referred to help provide some of that evidence. There were quite a few numbers that we kind of waded through at the start of the presentation and also at the end in those case studies. But it provides some data to be able to say this is the sort of impact this has. This isn't a one-off. It's been around for over 25 years now. So I think that's the first step, being able to show that, being able to talk about that. And I think, again, these role models are good. not to boost ego, but to say, here's examples of businesses like us that have done this. They're similar sizes, or building similar homes, so if they can do it, we can do it. I think then the next piece is, honestly, the penny dropping with someone in senior management or the owner of the business, where again, one of those benchmarking builders who's a similar size, building a similar type of home, and recognizing that they were dealing with some of the challenges that you were dealing with, and they did it, and seeing that commonality sometimes is the penny that drops. And very often, those starting on this process will pick one thing. It might be about reducing defects. It might be about customer satisfaction. It might be about health and safety. But they focus on one piece of the puzzle and look at the best practices, look at ways of driving that, and then move from there to the next and the next and the next. And in terms of how do you pick what that first thing is, and what are those next things that you do, that's again where the criteria is useful, because you can literally look at the criteria, go through and say, which of these is important to us as an organization based on where we are in terms of performance and what we care about right now, what is something that we need to drive.
Excellent, thank you. And I suppose, like with everything else that we've talked about over the different webinars, it really is just a case of getting stuck in, trying this out and learning from it. You can't really go wrong with applying these techniques or looking through the award criteria, can you?
No, and it does start discussion. If like I said, if you've just two people taking a look at their criteria, the irony is that where they disagree is where you're going to get discussion. Why is that in a different perspective? So discussion on this can start really quickly. I think the real value here, there's a couple of key value points. One is, regardless of what tools and techniques that you either are currently using or are thinking of using, they're going to fit into this. So this isn't about saying, oh, we're not doing the right tools, we're not doing the right approach. But yes, the other thing is that you can dip your toe in, you can take a piece of the puzzle, and you can work ahead on that, and you can take a look, as I said, for case studies online and get insights, get examples of how other people did things. I think it's rather unique in that way that a lot of these case studies are giving a lot of information, a lot of insights to the practices, the methodologies they're using, and the impacts that they got.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, that's all the questions we have had in. So I think what we'll do is we'll look at wrapping up there and giving everyone 15 minutes back. So I would like to very much thank Dennis Leonard of Graham Construction for his insightful presentation today. That was some great learning. A copy of the webinar will be sent out to everyone that attended, along with the files that Dennis has provided, and I've taken a look at those, and they look pretty good. Our next LCI webinar is not yet scheduled. It should be happening at the end of May, and we will send it out to the LCI DIST list once we're scheduled. So once again, thank you again from myself, from Dennis, and on behalf of all our CCF, CAF, and LCI colleagues. We'll chat again at our next webinar. Do remember to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or visit our newly revamped website. And finally, have a safe rest of day and be lean. Thanks. Goodbye.